Good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our next webinar from our GenAI Practitioners Hub. My name is Grzegorz Motriuk. I'm the head of sales applications development at Deviniti. Just to give you some context, at Deviniti, we build custom software and GenAI solutions, often for sensitive industries and regulated companies. That's why today we will be talking about on-premise Chat-GPT that allows companies to host their chat internally in the company to prevent any data leaks and any breaches. Let's start with the short agenda. First, I will tell you a little bit about the promise of ChatGPT, what happened over the past 2 years, the general expectations of clients that want to replicate the functionality of the chat. I will show you a case study of an actual implementation. I will briefly discuss costs of on-premise ChatGPT-like solution. I will show you use cases from other areas and talk about challenges and benefits. And we will finish with a QA session, which will last for about 2 minutes. And overall, the webinar will take about 45 minutes. Now, if you have any questions now or towards the end of the webinar, please use the questions functionality on the bottom right corner of your screen next to the chat window. You have a questions button, so please post any questions there. You can take screenshots if you're interested, but you will also receive this presentation by email and you will also receive a recording. So no need to do it on your end. So let's get started. What is the Chat-GPT doing for business right now and what it has been doing for the past 2 years since it arrived in our companies? Now, generally, Chat-GPT is a very, very quick win and a great solution for a lot of businesses. From what we've learned, around 90% of Fortune 500 companies use ChatGPT in their day-to-day work. We don't exactly know how they use it, but according to Wall Street Journal, those people who use it in their day-to-day tasks save about 2 hours every day on tasks that have been done manually so far. So it's a great way to save time. I use it personally a lot for quick write-ups, for quick summaries. It's a very, very powerful and accessible tool. However, if you use ChatGPT in your company, you know that it comes with some restrictions and it is not a panacea for all the problems that you have in your company as far as working with GenAI is concerned. Basically, everybody noticed quite early that there are problems with scaling the tool and integrating it with other systems. The scaling of the tool, well, there are multiple problems, but one is costs, which I will tell you more in a bit. The more you use ChatGPT or OpenAI API, the more you pay, and those costs can grow very quickly. The problem is also that very early in the life of ChatGPT, people started uploading sensitive documents to it. I'm not sure if you remember, but around 1.5 years ago, there was this very loud, prominent case of employees of Samsung who uploaded some pieces of code that were very, very proprietary, that were connected to their R&D and innovation departments. And they uploaded to ChatGPT to check their correctness or get some feedback from GenAI. And Samsung was the first company that completely banned the use of ChatGPT in their organization. A lot of this data that is uploaded by people is sensitive, and we see it in many different statistics because it's just such an easy tool to use. And there are so many quick wins that people are tempted to use it, not according to the best practices, or sometimes in complete breach of regulations or contracts. And now, while I was researching for this webinar, I found an interesting article by Uri Gal. He's a professor at the University of Sydney, and he's claiming that in the near and farther future, there will be a tendency by AI companies to gather more and more data because GenAI is data hungry. It needs more data all the time to develop, to grow, to be better. There are some ideas that maybe we'll create millions of synthetic documents using GenAI to feed GenAI so that GenAI can read, but probably this will not happen. And probably the direction will be what Yurigal claims, to get more and more data from sources like partners, like companies they buy, or their internal users. So the strategy of SaaS or web-based companies will always be to get more data. And this poses a security risk because you upload that data and you don't have any idea of what will happen, even if the companies claim that it is 100% secure. Now, if you look at some different countries and regions, they deal with the problem of data security differently. If you look at the snapshot, for example, at European Union regulation, which is our big market since we're based in Europe, there's an AI Act that is quite restrictive in terms of how data can be used and for what purposes, where the data can be stored. So a lot of companies and clients we're talking to, they say, like, we don't want the data to be outside our company because we really don't know how the AI Act will develop. Maybe we'll have to roll back to on-premise. So maybe let's start from building on-premise from day one. In the US, the legal framework is quite relaxed, but at the same time, there's so much innovation happening in the US that companies themselves are very protective of their data. An interesting article from Gartner says that in China, there's even a problem with GPUs right now because so many companies are so concerned about their data privacy that they build AI solutions on premise that it's hard to get NVIDIA cards or similar chips to compute GenAI algorithms. And in the Emirates, which is also a growing market for GenAI solutions, we see some increased interest by the government to regulate. There are 12 principles of AI technologies in place. It's still a developing story in the Emirates, but it might also get a little bit tighter in the future that we're not sure of yet. Now, if you think overall about cloud and on-premise solutions, it's really hard to find very good data. When we were researching for this webinar, my team and myself, we couldn't find really good comparisons between cloud and on-premise solutions, especially in the form of chat that we will be talking about today. There are no advanced research papers, no statistics, no large-scale polls of specialists. So we created a kind of internal scorecard for both of those solutions based on the conversations with our development teams and business teams. And this scorecard shows you data security, customization, deployment speed, upfront cost, and incremental cost. In data security, obviously, GenAI in cloud performs much worse. We gave it a score of 5 because obviously the companies implement a lot of security measures, but on-premise is so much safer because if it's completely disconnected from the outside world, it's an internal system, an internal server somewhere in your building or a building of your provider. It's very, very difficult to hack. It's obviously possible. We've heard those stories in the past, but it's very, very difficult. In terms of customization, both of those solutions are similar. Of course, on-premise GenAI solutions are a little bit more customizable because you can, use it in exactly the way that you want to use it. Deployment speed. Here, cloud solutions win by a large margin because cloud solutions, SaaS solutions, you just implement it. Maybe if you just need to integrate the API, it's much quicker. But let's go to costs. Upfront costs, very low in terms of SaaS solutions and relatively high in on-premise solutions because you need to buy your own hardware, you need to build your own software, and from that moment you can go forward. And incremental costs, so long-term use of solutions, well, here on-premise GenAI wins by a vast margin because if you utilize a lot of the tokens, you pay a lot of money for that in a SaaS or cloud model. Now, in principle, in general, what are the expectations of clients that we face? First of all, because ChatGPT is so popular, as I told you in the past, our clients are looking for the ChatGPT look and feel. The latest statistics that we saw says that ChatGPT accounts for more than 2/3 of all the GenAI AI tools available in the market, which means that everybody is used to it. And if we build a solution for a client, they really want to have that same user interface because people simply got used to existing SaaS ChatGPT. So we're really paying attention to that while building those tools, unless the client has a very specific need for some purposes, like if they want to integrate their chat with their existing front end and UI, that might become an additional tweak in the UI. Now, stay with me because I will be jumping in to a real life case study soon. But let's talk about privacy and security. An interesting statistics showed that 90% of attacks on GenAI are successful. I'm not sure why is that. So we don't have that deep knowledge of why GenAI attacks are so successful, maybe due to some behavioral problems. People are not used to handling data correctly. But those attacks on GenAI are becoming more and more sophisticated and happen more and more often. And if you look at the cost of a successful attack, if you compare on-premise and cloud software, generally, if the data is stored on public cloud, the cost is higher because it's easier to penetrate. There are much larger volumes of data stored and they are interconnected. So on average, a public cloud attack in the banking sector costs $4.8 million, while on premise it's around 15 to 20% lower. So in a very dramatic scenario where you are breached as a company, it's still better to be on premise because on average you will lose less data and the accesses are more restrictive if you have control over them. And now, as far as cost predictability is concerned, this is something that I mentioned in one of the previous slides. Now, right now, tokens in cloud models are getting lower. The tokens are getting a little cheaper, and this is good information, but we never know what will happen in the future. There are very different scenarios that can play out. The costs of hardware is one of them. If you build large-scale data centers with a large-scale GenAI solution, this is a huge cost, and the unavailability of hardware may be a problem. The same as energy costs. If they go up, the computational power is more expensive, and then the cost of tokens will rise. Also, the demand for online cloud solutions in the SaaS model will grow if there is more and more users using it. So these three different factors may impact the long-term costs of GenAI solutions. And finally, an interesting tweet from Sam Altman just over a week ago when he said that they are losing money on OpenAI Pro subscriptions. This was a very strange but also significant message that Sam Altman sent to the market as far as the financial side of his OpenAI business is concerned. Well, he represents a huge company, the market leader, of course, and the fact that he's saying that he's losing money is pretty significant. It can be a message to many different people for many different purposes, but what we can read from that is that it will have to be profitable, and this probably will be achieved by increasing the price. So as we saw in different slides, there are about 70% of market penetration of Chat-GPT, which means that they have control over the price. And if they increase that price, you will see this in your monthly bills, definitely, especially if you're a large company. And some of the companies that have a lot of data and a lot of tokens are consumed there, pay hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars every year for tokens. This is the situation that happens with some of the larger financial institutions. But even for smaller companies, if you have a bill amounting to a few or $1,000 each month, that's a pretty significant cost in the long run. So now let's quickly jump into the case study. Now, unfortunately, I will not be able to reveal a lot about the client because the client obviously is interested in deep confidentiality. I can only tell you that this is a mid-sized company working in very, very specific security sensitive environment. And their main goal was to substitute the Chat-GPT that their employees are using, and it's difficult to prevent them from using it, by an internal solution that would copy the functionality of the original Chat-GPT. Now, obviously, it is possible to copy a lot of those functionalities, but from day one, we've been communicating to the client that they need to stay reasonable because it's not possible to have the exact same solution due to the sheer scale, due to the sheer time and money spent on building ChatGPT and OpenAI. But a lot of those functionalities, like a generalist chat based on various LLMs, can be achieved at a quite reasonable cost and relatively quickly. So what were the requirements? Apart from those standard requirements such as user logging, interaction history, so access to different conversations, the client wanted something in particular that was the choice of AI models. So the users are able to choose the model that they are conversing with. This is both due to the fact that some models are better than others, and also because some may be completely useless in their case, in their specific case, and they will simply just switch them off. So especially in this early phases, they want to test different models, and they chose quite a few, I think around 10 models that they want to implement. And the users in the long run will be able to test them. Obviously, they want user feedback, and this feedback will be just a thumbs up or thumbs down when ChatGPT, internal ChatGPT, so the proprietary solution, answers the question. That will give feedback to our software to train and answer better in the future. But the plan is also to build a functionality that will allow to comment on the answers in natural language, so you'll be able to simply write that you like or dislike the answer and why you dislike. Maybe it's not precise enough, maybe the mathematical calculation is not exact, or the data that they're providing is outdated. So this interaction, this user feedback, will be quite advanced. Now, mind you, we will not be fine-tuning the models themselves, because we can do that because we build our own models. We know how to do it, but this is quite complex and quite inefficient. What we prefer to do is to do those upgrades and customization on the RAG level. So if you're thinking of fine-tuning a model, just bear in mind that this is quite a complex task, but I'm happy to discuss this as well. So I think this is also a good moment to remind you that you can just jump into LinkedIn anytime during that webinar or after and find me, and I'll be happy to connect and discuss any matters relating to GenAI with you. Some other functional requirements included pretty standard long-running conversational context. So that we want to have an open-ended conversation that the user will have with GenAI, and support for different types of files like text, PDFs, images, and audio. But also the client wanted rich output like images and audio responses as well. So this is pretty much what ChatGPT does, and they wanted to have it in their own system. As far as security is concerned, OpenLDAP credentials, endpoint protection, and data privacy were highly sought for. Now, in terms of performance monitoring and logging, they assumed that this tool will serve up to 25 simultaneous requests from users, which is not a huge number, but if you look at the infrastructure capability, 25 different concurrent conversations is quite a lot, but this is perfectly enough for that company, as they are not expecting that people will be chatting with GenAI all the time. They obviously want to have good latency, under 5 seconds per user for first token. As far as logs and audit is concerned, they want to have a very extensive capability there, which is usually not possible when you look at SaaS solutions. So this is something that we focus on as well. Now, let me tell you a little bit about our process. So we've received that information from the client, but we started thinking, is it worthwhile building such a complex system that covers all the areas that were sent to us in the project documentation? And we started conversing with the client. We hosted a few workshops that we usually host before we start working, and to just get a better grasp of what the MVP should look like. And we removed several functionalities from version 1. And for example, we decided to postpone the processing of images and tables in uploaded documents for future use. This requires additional language models, additional configuration, and to speed up development, to deliver the solution faster to the client. The client agreed to postpone this. We also decided to postpone the functionality that would allow the bot to provide answers with images and audio. And this is also a conscious decision that shortens the time to market of that solution. Also, we decided not to go with partitioning of RAM and VRAM in the beginning, and we decided not to integrate log management, logs of the system with external tools. And this helped us design a system that was relatively functional, that would serve the needs of the client, that would allow for extensive testing, but also would not be extremely difficult and costly to build in the initial stages of the cooperation. For those of you who are interested in a little bit more technical aspect, this is the high-level architecture, but not of the MVP, but of the actual final solutions that we are thinking of building post MVP. So we're obviously basing it around NVIDIA, OpenLDP, and containerization will be done in Kubernetes. Finally, let's go to the costs. So let's see what kind of financial investment is required to build such an MVP. I'm talking about the MVP, not the final solution. It can be a little bit more costly. Now, I'm not sure what are your guesses. Maybe you can think of a figure in your head to try to think how much the development would cost. I will show it to you in a moment. Maybe your guess will be right, or maybe it will be far away, but that's an interesting exercise that you can do. Well, the total cost of development of the MVP is roughly $30,000 to $40,000. That includes analysis, setup, project management, development, and testing. This does not include cases where specialists, developers would have to travel to the site of the client, because you must know that in many instances, those solutions that we build are so highly isolated that the clients don't agree to do any work remotely. So if there's any work necessary on site, we can also deliver it, but this generates a little bit more of costs. But it's also worth remembering that not all the development will have to happen on the actual infrastructure. We can rent a GPU power that is just for us. It's very private, but it's in the cloud. In AWS or some other provider, we can deliver and test the solution using that infrastructure, and we can do it remotely, and then only install the solution at the client site in a few days of work where our engineers will travel there. As far as cost of infrastructure is concerned, well, this is an open-ended story. I mean, it really depends on how powerful this solution has to be, how many concurrent users, how many queries to the system will be delivered. In that case, we think that in the MVP and testing phase, in the first months, 2 H100 cards from NVIDIA should be enough. It can be scaled to 4 or the multiply of that. The cost of 2 H100 cards is roughly $70,000. But if you have a good provider, you may negotiate this price as well. So in short, if you want a stripped down version of a ChatGPT on your own servers, you must think about the cost of around $40,000 USD plus the infrastructure, unless you want to rent this infrastructure somewhere, even if it's isolated from the rest of the internet. Another possibility is to build a complaints management solution that we also built for Credit Agricole. This helps handle queries incoming to the bank. A large bank has, thousands or tens of thousands of queries every month, so it's a large volume, and a lot of employees, even before they respond, they have to read those emails and categorize them. So this tool does a lot of work for them. So there's up to 90% of accuracy and email categorization. So we are pretty certain that the emails reach the people that should be reached within the organization, but also the tool helps to answer those emails, so proposes an answer, and the tool and it can be used in this way. Mind you, some of the countries do not allow for that kind of GenAI generated responses. or the legal framework makes it so risky that people in those institutions are hesitant to implement it. So you always have to look at your own framework locally. Another solution that we built is a cobot for Emirates Bank that helps salespeople, first of all, interview the client. So the employee, the salesperson, would ask some questions to the client. They would input it on a tablet to the GenAI solution. The solution would provide follow-up questions. And based on that conversation, the bot will suggest best products, so the choice of the best credit line, for example, and also provide some sales arguments, sales pitch. So basically, the salespeople are very, very much empowered. They don't have to remember all the products. They don't have to memorize a lot of different documents and learn how to sell them, because the machine and the bot helps them do it more efficiently. And the clients in the end have access to a much better offer because it's not based on, erroneous human memory. One another example is a video to content tool that first analyzes videos. And I'm not talking about individuals, I'm talking about thousands of hours of videos. So our solutions can read those videos and basically understand different scenes. They can describe those scenes. They can describe what they see in the scene. So in the case of that image that you see, the description would be a man in his 20s or 30s with glasses, a black t-shirt, and a mustache. And that information will be stored in a database, which then can be searched. So when you're a media organization or you have a lot of video to handle, you can write in the search box, show me all scenes where men in uniforms are shown, or show me women in business context, right? So you can find a lot of those very specific videos that you can then turn automatically into articles. If there's enough content, we can, spoken content, we can turn those videos into articles, blog posts, landing pages, etc., or prepare them to be shipped into social media and published very quickly. So there's not a lot of manual work. If you're a content media publisher, you can just quickly search for videos of funny dogs, and with a few clicks of the button, the bot will search your database of all the images of funny dogs and post them on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, or wherever you want to post them. I'm saying images, but it's both for images and entire video scenes, obviously. Finally, one of the solutions is an anonymizer tool. Especially in those highly sensitive contexts, we can use GenAI to anonymize data like names, addresses, before this data is moved to a different database, to a different tool, to a different GenAI solution. So it can be used as a middle layer to make sure that no sensitive data leaves the system when it goes to the target system to which it is connected. Okay, to sum up, what are the challenges? What are the benefits? Well, challenges of on-premise GenAI, well, it's upfront cost, as I mentioned to you. And as you saw, if you want to build a Chat-GPT-like solution on your own servers with your own GPU card, probably the cost would reach $100,000. Obviously, you have to be ready to maintain and support this application internally or through a partner, and you have to have access to the systems. If you're a third-party partner, a service company like ours, we need to make sure that we have access to those systems in some way. The benefits is full control and independence, regulatory independence. So if there's some kind of regulation being implemented, you may just be ready for that. There is no token costs when scaling, which is quite important if you grow and if your needs grow. But also having a tool built specifically for you allows you for much more experimentation and much more creative thinking. And this builds in-house innovation culture. So it's not only about those marginal gains in terms of time saved on work, getting rid of those manual tasks. It's about promoting in-house innovation culture. And the vast majority of companies will have to go into that direction if they want to stay competitive, because you can only optimize your business to a certain level. At some point, you need to become innovative in order to compete. This is more or less it for me. Let me check if we have any questions. Okay. Which models do you include? Well, we can include any model that is available for download and whose license allows us to use it on premise. Some of the popular models are Llama, Mixtral, or Falcon. that we use. How long does it take to develop a solution? I would say that the MVP of that Chat-GPT-like application that I showed you would take around 2 or 3 months to develop. Some of those projects that we build can be built quicker, in about 1 month. Of course, they have reduced functionality. But if you use some of the components that we already have, like if you would, as a client, agree to have some microservices or some components that we already pre-built in your system, and then it really shortens the time. Obviously, we then don't transfer the entire IP to you, but it's quicker and faster. But if you want to have full IP, then we have to develop everything from scratch. What are the costs of breach in hybrid system the lowest? To be honest, I don't know why. Maybe that's one of the possibilities, is that people don't use hybrid systems so much. I mean, if they are not so super popular, right? Like people build things either in the cloud or on premise, and hybrid is just growing now. So maybe the data that is stored in the systems is not so extensive. So whenever there's a breach, there's not so much data taken, but I'm not sure. This was unfortunately not our research. I think these are all the questions that were posted. I can see some comments also in the chat. Thank you, B, for your interest. Happy to talk in the future. Please expect the presentation and the recording soon in your email inbox, and see you soon.